Students, we are learning about operating system subjects. So it is a subject for final year computer science degree students. So in this subject we have learnt many concepts before. In my previous video lesson I have talked about process. Briefly I will just want to recollect the information which I have discussed in the previous video lesson. There we have discussed what is a process. A process is nothing but a program under execution. And there are different states of processes: new, ready, running, waiting, and terminating. So there are 5 states of processes. A process can be in any of the states. And the other thing we have discussed in the last class is process control block. So it is like an information storage table where we store about the information regarding the process. So this was our last class. In continuation to that, in today's video lesson, I would like to explain operations on processes. What are the operations we are going to do with the processes? And the other topic I want to just give a brief idea about inter-process communication. It is again the continuation of processes. So it is also the topic related to processes. So let's continue with our video lesson. So process creation. So what is the meaning of process creation? Or we can call another thing process. What is the need of process creation? Simply, a process creation can be when you switch on your system, your operating system will be booting. So that means it's a creation of a process. For example, if you want to print an image, so it is also a task which needs to be executed. Okay, so a process creation is required whenever the system gets initialized. That means whenever the task gets initialized. So this process creation will be initiated by making use of system calls. So either we can create a process using create process system call or fork system call in Unix operating system. So let's see, processes in most systems can execute concurrently. The meaning is multiprogramming is allowed. Multiprogramming means at a time we can run more than one program on our computer. So multiprogramming. That means the multiple processes are running concurrently. Suppose if I want to print any data, at the same time I can browse any data, or I can type some data onto my laptop. So at a time both the windows are open. One window is allowed to print the data. That means one process is using the output device, that is the printer, whereas the other program is concurrently executing. The process is using some other resource. So processes in most systems can execute concurrently by using different memory locations or files, or they can use different resources available. So and they can be created and deleted dynamically. Based on the requirement, the processes can be created according to the requirement. Otherwise, they can be deleted dynamically. So a new process can be created at the time of initialization of operating system. Suppose when you are going to execute your C program, so execute, so the process will be initialized. So what we call there, process is executed using operating system. Run command will be given to operating system. So a new process can be created at the time of initialization of operating system, or when system calls such as fork. Fork is the system call used in Unix operating system, are initiated by other processes. One process can initiate and another process, like sub processes, are created. So parent process creates child process. Parent process means a main function which can create sub functions. This is a simple example, as you can understand. Parent process is the main function which can call any other functions. So they are all the sub functions. Here we are calling it as main process, which is nothing but the parent process, and we can have different child processes. So parent process creates child processes, which in turn create other processes, forming a tree of processes. It forms a tree of processes. So when a process is created, operating system assigns a unique process ID. Whenever the process is created, it is given with unique process ID, like our roll number. Whenever a new student joins in the college, he will be allotted with a new hall ticket number, so that he can be uniquely identified throughout the university. Same way, each process is given a unique process identification number, which is nothing but process identifier, PID. We call it as PID. So each of these new processes may in turn create other processes. One PID can create many other processes, forming a tree of processes. Okay. So like this, I have process A. That process A is having two childs, process B and process C. Okay. Process A is also a parent process, whereas process B is also a parent process. From process B, I have two other childs, that is process D and process E. Hope you can see this. So here process F is the child process of process C. So the parent process can create the child processes and they can execute. So here we need to learn two things. So what are the two things we have here? There are the parent processes and child processes. So two things we have to understand here. One is resource sharing, another one is address space. Resource sharing. We just talk about resource sharing. So whenever the process is created, operating system allocates the resources to the parent process. Suppose if you see about process B. So process B will be allocated some of the resources so that it can execute along with that resources. That means all those resources which are allocated to that are enough to execute the process B. But the process B has created two child processes which are nothing but process D and process E. So process D and process E can execute by sharing the resources which are allocated to process B. That means the child processes can share the resources of parent, or the other case may be the parent process and child process may have resources allocated separately. They may not share the common resources. There are the two scenarios. Resources can be shared among parent process and child process. Otherwise, parent process can not give the resources. That means both the processes, parent process as well as child process, can have their own resources available so that they can execute independently. So the other aspect which we need to see here is the address space. So whenever the process starts executing, that means it is loaded into the memory. So some address space will be allocated to the parent process. That means the memory is allocated to the parent process. So the same memory as the child process. So it is the sub process of the parent process. So the same memory can be accessed. That means the parent child process also can reside in the same memory, or the child process can be loaded into some another address space. That means the memory also can be different. Either the same address space can be shared among parent process as well as child process, or they can be independently loaded into memory and the operating system can execute them independently. So these are the two things which are required to be taken care in the case of process creation. Okay. So this is the example of process creation using fork system call. System call is used to, we have learned system call is used to ask the operating system to do something. Okay. So when process ID equals to fork, that means after parent creates a fork. That means using fork you are creating a process. Okay. Either it can go to wait. Okay. Parent resumes execution. That means if this is done, if this part is done, that means it is waiting. That means child process is not created. So the parent resumes execution. So the parent process ID is greater than 0. That means the parent process is having some value. So the parent resumes execution. That means the child is not under execution. So parent can resume its execution. The other way, when it is given with the fork, that means the child process is given with some process ID. So it is under execution and exit. Then it can go back to wait condition. That means the parent will be in waiting condition. So it is in Unix system. Okay. You can refer to the Albert Silberstadt's textbook where you can see the example program given for this diagram. So next aspect of today's video lesson is process termination. So process termination. What is the need of process termination? After finishing of the process, after finishing the task, it has to release all the resources which are allocated to the process. So here comes again two scenarios. Either the process can be terminated abnormally or normally. Normally the process can be terminated if all the tasks are completed properly. So then we can say the process is terminated in time, normal termination, otherwise abnormal termination. So a process terminates when it finishes executing its final statement. Last statement will be executed and asks the operating system to delete it by using the exit system call. Fork is used to create the process, whereas exit is used to delete the process. Okay, either executing the final statement of the process or deleting from the operating system by using system call exit. So all the resources of the process. What are the resources? Including physical and virtual memory. Opening the files, that means with any files associated to that process, and IO buffers, that means IO devices, mechanical devices, are deallocated by the operating system. So the delete process will do all these things, are all deallocated. That means all are related to this process are deallocated. Then the process termination will be happening. So next, the termination of a process when the instruction has been executed successfully, called normal termination. That means if it is executed properly, without any delay, without any memory lapse, or without any interrupts, or without any resources. So there may be any difficulty may arise while executing the process. So if it completes without any problem, without any delay, or without any interrupt, then the process is said to be terminated perfectly. Otherwise, however, there are instances when a process terminates due to some error. Simply I can say there is no IO device available. If it is asking for any input-output device which is not available. So that this termination is called as abnormal termination of a process. If the process is not satisfactorily executed, then that is called process is terminated abnormally. Right? Next. So these are the two operations on processes. So next topic I would like to explain in today's video lesson is IPC, which is very important concept in an operating system. IPC is nothing but inter-process communication. So here I have given you a picture. What does that telling you? There are two processes, process A and process B. They are shaking their hands. That means we are with you. If process A wants anything to be done, he can use the other process. If process B wants to execute anything and he wants any resources or any cooperation, so he can share the information with process A. Process A and process B are friends here. So they can communicate the information with some mechanisms, which I am going to explain now. So we'll just have an overview of IPC in today's video lesson. So as the picture says, process A and process B are friends here. They both cooperate each other so that they can execute perfectly. Because we have talked previously that the process may terminate abnormally. Because if any process requires the data which is not shared by any other process, so this process has to wait until that process finishes and that process has to give the data. So if both the processes are not talking to each other, if both the processes are not communicating with each other, both the processes has to terminate abnormally. So to avoid that misconception, we have a mechanism called IPC, inter-process communication. That means both the processes in concurrency, both the processes at the same place can communicate with each other. Okay. So inter-process communication. So what does it mean? Inter-process communication refers to a mechanism where the operating system allows various processes to communicate with each other. The operating system allows both the processes, not only both, all the processes which are involved. I mean, the communication will be performed only with the two processes, process A and process B. Okay, so they can communicate with each other so that they can cooperate to perform perfectly. Okay, so before that, we have two things. A process can be of two types. One is independent process, another one is cooperating process. As the name indicates, independent process. That means a process which is independent of its own and it does not want to communicate anything to the other process and it does not want anything to be shared from other process. So it is an independent process. The other process is cooperating process. It is ready to share anything with other process, or it is ready to share, get any data to it. it is ready to share anything from other process, or it is ready to share anything to other process. So let's see. A process is independent if it cannot affect. That means it is independently executing. It is not affecting. That means here I am. We can see the example which I have discussed already. If it is holding the resource which is waiting by any other process, so it is not. So that means it is affecting the execution of other process. So an independent process is, it cannot affect or be affected. It will not affect other process, or it will not be affected by other process. It is independent of its own resources. It is independent of its own address space. So it is not bothered about any other process. So there is no need of exchanging any information or waiting for any resource. So a process is independent. We can say a process is independent if it cannot affect or be affected by other processes executing in the system. If it is not affecting or be affected by any other process, that means that process we call it as independent process. The other thing, a process is cooperating. If it can affect or be affected, if it can affect, that means it is in relation with other process. So that means it can affect other process for execution, and be affected, that means it is waiting for any resource from other process by the other processes executing in the system. That means it is in relation with other process. So it is cooperating process. So there are two types of processes. So here comes the question that communication is required for cooperating process, whereas independent process does not require any kind of communication. Hope this is clear. So several reasons for process cooperation. What are the reasons? Information sharing is one of the reason. The information which is available at one process may be required by any other process. So information sharing, that means the files sharing is required for both the processes. So this may be one of the reasons. And another reason, computation speed up. That means when the resources are shared, so the resources will not be idle for more time. When one process is doing one thing, another process will be using the resource, another process will be doing some other work. So the computation speed up will be increased. Modularity, dividing the complex process into simpler tasks. It is another advantage. And convenience, using all the informations is another convenience. That means if both are cooperating, they are convenient to each other. They can share the information, they can share the resources, they can share the memory space. Okay, these are the reasons for cooperation. That means these are the reasons for inter-process communication. So next, process can communicate with each other through both shared memory and message passing. There are two techniques available in inter-process communication, which are nothing but shared memory and message passing. As the name indicates, shared memory. So there will be a memory segment which will share the common memory. What we are talking about here, we are talking that both the processes, process A and process B, want to communicate some information. So process A wants to send some information to process B, and it has to receive the message. So both has to share the information. For that, they both allocate some shared segment of memory. That means there will be a common memory where process A gives the information which is required for process B, and process B will take the information from shared memory. So the common memory space will share the information. That means there will be a common place which shares the data among both the processes. Right? That is the one way of inter-process communication, share the memory. The another way is message passing. Message passing is another way of inter-process communication. As the name indicates, it passes the message to other process. That means giving a letter, inland letters. We post a letter, we write a letter and we'll be sending it to, simply you can imagine it as a mail. So where do our mails go? Our mails will go to the Gmail server. From there, it will send it back to the receiver. So we will send to the server. Server will send the message to the receiver. So simply, it is message passing, like sending a mail. In next video lesson, we'll see in depth of this too. Here just I want to give you a basic brief idea regarding this. So this is the definition. In the shared memory model, a region of memory that is shared by cooperating processes is established. So here a region of memory, that means a copy or some segment of memory is assigned. You be there, get the data, share it with other process, or get the data from this process, share it with other process. So he will be acting as a post box. Okay. That memory segment will be acting as a post box so that he can get the data and share it with other process. So processes can then exchange information by reading and writing data to the shared region. So this is a common place. So from here, process A will write here, process B will read from here. Okay, so the common area will be helping both the processes to write or to read the data from the same memory segment. So this is the concept of shared memory. So here I can give you an example of producer-consumer problem. So shared memory, example of shared memory is producer-consumer problem. In next video lesson, I will explain in depth of producer-consumer problem. Here just I want to tell you, producer-consumer problem means if only the producer produces the information, the consumer can consume the data. Same thing, process A writes the data, then only the process B can read the data. So the producer-consumer problem is an example of which uses the concept of shared memory. Okay. So next is the message passing. So it is simply like sending a mail. So here communication takes place by means of messages exchanged between the cooperating processes. Process A and process B will send the mails together. They will share the messages, okay, through some communication link. Either it can be physical or logical. Okay. So message passing mechanisms establish a communication link. They both establish a communication link through physical data. Physically, they can send the message to other process or they can receive the message. Same way, a logical communication link also can be established among them. Exchange messages to primitive operations for fixed or variable sized message passing. There are two primitive operations, that means the basic operations available in message passing. It can be fixed or variable sized message passing. That means here we have two things, send and receive. So it can be, the message can be the fixed size or the message can be a variable length. Okay, there are the two mechanisms which we will learn in the coming classes. So here you can see so the first picture says about shared memory. So process A and process B, are all allocated with kernel. They don't have any connection with kernel. They don't require to go with kernel. So they just have a shared memory between process A and process B. So process A sends the data to shared memory. From shared memory, the process B is receiving the data. So only one thing here we have to remember, processes does not ready, that means they don't accept to share the same information with any other process. But when it comes to shared memory concept, we should not have the restriction like that. That means they should be ready to share any information. And one more thing, whoever wants to send the data, the process which is sending the data has to allocate a memory for the shared segment. Somebody has to give the memory, right? Here you can see the process A, process B, process C, and so on. Who is going to give the share memory there? Who is sending the data? So he is initiating this data. So shared memory will be allocate the memory. In shared memory concept, whoever sends the data, he has to allocate some shared segment of memory, so that can send the data to, that can be received by the other process which is under cooperation. So this is the concept of shared memory. Whereas coming to the next case, that is message passing. In the case of message passing, you can see the picture, the second picture. Here all the processes are having M. M is nothing but message in packets. We can imagine it as a mail. So the message can be passed to the kernel. Okay, so it is sent, you can imagine this is like a server. So this message can be passed to kernel, and kernel will send back the data to process B. So it will be sent to kernel and it is sent back to process B. So like this, the messages are transmitted among the processes. So these are the two techniques used in inter-process communication. Okay, so let's get into some of the advantages and disadvantages of shared memory and message passing. I have written here. Message passing is useful for exchanging smaller amounts of data. Okay, it is very easy when you use it as smaller amounts of data, because no conflicts need to be avoided. So it is convenient for smaller amounts of data. Whereas message passing is also easier to implement in a distributed system than shared memory. Compared to shared memory, message passing is easier in distributed systems. And finally, shared memory can be faster than message passing, since message passing systems are typically implemented using system calls. That means using system calls, in message passing, every time you have to go to the kernel, and kernel has to send back the same information to the process B. So it is taking a time. So whereas the shared memory is faster than message passing, are typically implemented using system calls and thus require the more time consuming task of kernel intervention. So every time kernel has to take an initiation. Kernel has to work between process A and process B. So in message passing, the example for message passing is client server system. Client server system. What is the client server system? Whenever the client requests the message, that means request for some page, server has to give the page. So an example of message passing system is client server system. So every time the server has to intervene so that the message can be passed between those two, server and the client. So in some cases, message passing is faster for the smaller amounts of data, whereas shared memory is better when it as because it is not intervening with kernel. It is directly sharing among two processes. So this is another advantage. Both has their own advantages. Okay, and finally we can say shared memory has its own advantages, whereas message passing has its own advantages. Both are working independently for inter-process communication. Okay, hope you have enjoyed this class.